Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. It's been 12 years since you ain't been around. These are all the lines I know so far. Hey, Michael Hayes, Freebird Road. Check that out on YouTube while you're checking us out. And hopefully you're watching us on YouTube. But check out Freebird Road on YouTube. We're trying to get it over 1 million views. We're in the 800 and some odd range. We need to get it up over 1 million. Please, for me, Freebird Road. Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Gone. Maybe I should just do a cover of that. What do you think?
I don't think we need that. I don't think
No?
we need that. No.
You don't know what you need.
Hey, here's what I did need. I needed to see WWE in Madison Square Garden, and we saw it on Friday night. And man, it was an eventful show. We had that fantastic angle to close the night with the Bloodline and Paul Heyman, and of course, afterwards we heard a few words from Cody Rhodes, who remade that iconic pose with a championship identical to the one that Dusty held up in the same building years before. And it was Mrs. Braxton's last day in the WWE. It was an eventful show at MSG this past Friday, was it not?
It's cray, man. Sold out, hanging from the rafters. 98,000 people. SRO signs went out early.
Wait, you said 98,000.
Yeah. Gorilla Monsoon, no matter what you gave him.
You just say
Gorilla would multiply at times about 8.
I got you.
And, it's like, oh, God, shit, Gino, we had a hell of a house here. How many? I said, oh, shit, we had 11,000 sold out. 19,000 hanging from the rafters. SRO signs went out early, folks. Gino, building only holds 11,000. 22,000.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun catching up with JBL last week. We did a special little watch along of his match with Eddie Guerrero from way back when. The Great American Bash 2004. We just covered that pay-per-view here last week on the show. And I just thought that whole conversation about the finish you wanted to do and the finish we actually did, and hey, call Dusty. That was a fun story, was it not?
It's a hell of a day. It's one that I won't soon forget. That's one of those. And again, people say, gosh, Bruce, you don't remember so much. But then again, you remember certain things. Remember the things that really meant something to me and affected me and impacted me in that time frame. So that was something that really just kind of impacted. I don't know that everybody got impacted because I don't want to. You don't always want to share your frustrations with everyone around you. You just want to kind of go on with your day and do your shit and take it all in with the good air out, that kind of stuff.
Well, today we're talking about Night of Champions 2008. It went down on June 29th, 2008 from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. The show was a sellout, announced as being 16,101 fans. Paid attendance was around the 13,000 range. This is the second Night of the Champions pay-per-view from WWE. The previous year, it was included with Vengeance. Night of the Champions received 273,000 buys. It's going to increase total pay-per-view revenue top line by $21 million. Let's sort of talk about where we are as we're getting into the news and notes of this time period. Vince McMahon is going to announce the details of a $1 million giveaway. He's going to do it on Monday Night Raw on June the 2nd, and he even holds a press conference on June the 3rd. Now on TV, he came out with $1 million in cash. Meltzer would say did a very desperate sounding promo. As noted, this $1 million giveaway in many ways mirrored Eric Bischoff in '99 when he had cracked under the pressure of declining ratings against competition. But even more than the giveaway, McMahon's promo, trying to create an us against them mindset in the fans, went off about the negative perceptions of pro wrestling fans and how elitists don't like pro wrestling and how the elitists don't like you because you're wrestling fans. Man, there's a lot to unpack here. What'd you make of this marketing campaign and this promo sort of anti the elitists about pro wrestling. We've all probably experienced that. What'd you think about Vince being the voice of that here?
Well, I think that it's something that comes from the heart because if you've been as I have, I've lived my whole life ever since I was 4 years old, wanting to do one thing, and that's be a wrestler, be in the wrestling business. And I've worked in it since I was literally 10 years old. So to have people look down their nose at you and like, you're wrestling? Isn't that fake? Yeah, so your eyelashes. Um, it's you live with it. I've lived with it, and I don't like it because it's like saying to a garbage man, "Oh, you pick up garbage?" It's like, "Yeah, man, it's a trade. You know what? It pays, and he feeds his family, and maybe he enjoys it. Who knows?" But the overall, I think, from media, from people in general who don't know and don't appreciate the art form and what it is that we do, there is a tendency for people to look negatively, look down their noses at the business. The giveaway was something that we came up with from a standpoint of doing a contest and getting the audience involved and rewarding the audience for watching the show. It's like, okay, why do I want to watch the show? Well, if you watch the show, you're going to have a chance to win some of this money. And we went back to there was a show in Houston on ABC Channel 13. It's called Dialing for Dollars. And I'm pretty sure that most um I don't know, a lot of markets had their own version of Dialing for Dollars. And what they would do is they would take the phone book and they would cut the phone book up into little squares and they put them in a hopper and you turn the hopper and all this shit and it was you know uh seven down or something like that. You would look at it, you take the seventh name down, read the name, call the number, and say, "Are you watching Dialing for Dollars? What is the jackpot right now?" And if you're watching Dialing for Dollars and you know the jackpot is $750, you say, "Well, Don, the jackpot is now $750." And you go, "Congratulations, Fred. You have just won $750 for watching Dialing for Dollars. And we'll see you when we get back." And that was the concept. Sometimes people, so if you didn't know, okay, then it's like, do you know the jackpot? No, I'm not watching right now. You want to take a guess? Well, $200. Well, you guess wrong. Now the jackpot goes up another $50, and the jackpot now goes up to $800. So Dialing for Dollars was a great gimmick. It got people to watch the show. They watched the show because they knew they had a chance to win money. And this was an opportunity to engage the audience to watch the show because I could be the one. I could be the one that they draw my name and they call me during the show, and I'm going to have to know how much money he's giving away at that time. Just got to be watching the show. So it was a stunt to garner viewers, garner lapsed viewers, new viewers, whatever it is, people to tune in to see and to potentially win a lot of money.
McMahon is telling fans to register on the company website, which is, of course, going to help build a huge mailing list for products for internet emails, blasts, and things like that. And of the names registered, every week at the start of Raw, McMahon will give out a code. And then during the show, he's going to make at least half a dozen calls to people who are registered. If they're watching the show and know the code, they'll get a prize. If they aren't watching, they won't know the code. Of course, the contest is only open to U.S. residents. And the breakdown is the $1 million will be given away each week, with one person getting 250 grand, two getting 200,000, one getting 125, one getting 98,000, one getting 75,000, and one getting $51,998. And you might be thinking, well, that leaves $2. Yes, one person wins $2. Is that the Vince McMahon special? That feels like that's his kind of humor. Here's $2, pal.
Well, you look, hey, it's everybody wants to win that $250,000 prize, but You may just get two. It depends. It depends on what it is at the time. Yeah, it's fun shit. But you got to watch to find out, and you want to watch to see who gets only that $2. To me, that's just as intriguing as who gets the 250.
Of course, Meltzer can't help himself, and he does the math. If we go with the idea that USA pays WWE 550K per week for a 3.2 rating, that makes the value of a rating point to USA about 172,000, which is actually one hell of a bargain. But if this increases to a point 3.2 rather to a 3.4, then McMahon will be spending $1 million for what USA has valued something around $34,000. So he's trying to justify it logically, but that doesn't pay any sort of context or give any sort of credit to building the mailing list. Like the mailing list is the
It's
home
not
run.
just building a mailing list. It's awareness. It's
Sure.
getting people to talk about this billionaire giving away $1 million of his own money, and that is what it was because you couldn't take it out of the company. It's a publicly traded company, and the board was like, "Can't take that out of the company money to just give it away." So Vince said, "Okay, I'll pay it personally," and it was a publicity stunt. It was a stunt. It got people talking everywhere. Local media, every place that we went, everybody was talking about giving away the money.
It's written here with no advertising beforehand, money being given away was also brought to house shows, with fans being picked out of the stands at house shows in Redding and Stockton, California, to be guest timekeepers and guest seconds, mostly picking out children and then giving them $200 for their efforts. That's a nice gesture. This is a nice little thing to let McMahon's millions sort of spill over into the live event business, getting the kids involved to be a timekeeper. That really, I could see how that would add to the experience of a family fun day at the
Sure.
matches.
Yeah, come to, not only do you have to watch TV, but you can come to a live event and enjoy a great show and still have the possibility of winning money. It's a nice added attraction.
Was anybody against the idea of doing this sort of lottery sort of concept?
Not really, no. It was, again, it was you're paying. Look, you would pay for advertising, and this was a way of getting advertising, and you're paying your customer. So it hits all, it hits on all sides. So I think it's very good. No, nothing wrong with that at all.
So, Bruce, let's talk about, this maybe didn't go. I mean, did it go according to plan? I mean, I know that you did get a lot of publicity, but I don't know that it was necessarily a ratings bonanza. And that's not to say that every idea that doesn't work fabulously wasn't worth a try. But would you call this campaign a success, do you think?
Yeah, we're still talking about it, aren't we?
We
And
are.
people still do talk about it all the time. Hey, remember the time you guys gave away $1 million, giving it all the money away, and to be able to see it. Most people have never even seen $1 million in cash in one place at one time,
Right.
and at least you got to see that.
Do
I
you,
remember when they delivered it, man, in the Brinks truck and shit, and they were so paranoid about all the cameras and production people around because we're documenting it and shooting it and all this stuff, and our security is just sweating bullets, like, "Oh man, God, Bruce, can you get everybody away, man?" I'm like, "No, I got to document." And he had to count it all by hand, and it was quite the experience. It was interesting. Brought all of it in, man. Literally, the whole Brinks truck and armed guards and all this shit, and then brought it into a room and had to count it all. Then we put it in the acrylic case and locked it up. You had to have guards with it at all times.
talk to me a little bit about the feedback, if any, that you got from the boys or the talent. I mean, I could see how just the way the industry is at times, where some of these guys maybe didn't think this was so cool. Like, oh, we're just giving $1 million a week away now, but I can't blah, blah, blah. I mean, there had to be some negativity surrounding it, right? Of
Well, you're gonna have negativity around everything, Conrad.
Yeah, of
No matter
course.
what you do.
Course.
So yeah, sure. I'm sure there was some negativity, but okay. I tell you what, we won't promote anything, and then let's see how you do.
Right.
Make sure your checks get there every week. long as your check was getting there, what's the big deal?
Let's talk a little bit about the actual execution of it, because I think a lot of us have seen in more recent years where people started to post it again. Some of the fumbling around with getting the phone and getting the person on the phone and it's live.
Hilarious.
And we've all heard these sort of quirks that maybe Vince has to his personality. You know those full well, and here you are in Gorilla seeing this thing not going nearly as smoothly as maybe Vince would have wanted. What do you remember of all this?
Yeah, I mean, but you're live television, so shit's going to go wrong. But then again, it was meant to happen, so you go with it. But that's live television. That's the beauty of live television. It shouldn't be perfect.
Right.
So yeah, it gives you something to talk about. Would you wanted it to be perfect? I think in the perfect world of, oh my God, we've rehearsed this. This has to go exactly like you imagine it to go. But it's better when it doesn't. No, it gives us something to talk about and somebody to say, oh yeah, well, that didn't work. Oh well.
So Vince handled this pretty well. I mean, he
Oh
understood
yeah,
just the
you have
nature
to.
of live TV.
Sure.
It's written here too. Vince himself had less personal interaction with much of the creative team in the past few weeks, which has the team frustrated and in some cases even freaked out because they're working without much of an established direction. With the draft coming up, literally nobody knows what is going to happen. The Undertaker leaving was something that was kept from the team until the addition of the stipulation to the match. They weren't giving any details, only that Vince told them he needed to be written out and then asked people on the team for ideas of how to do it. Vince didn't want to do an injury angle because The Undertaker's been out a few times in recent years with real injuries and doesn't want to give the perception that he's breaking down. Stephanie's continuing to push the team to come up with long term storylines, but nobody wants to come up with a long term idea knowing Vince is changing everything every week. Let's talk about that for a minute. I know this is all rearview mirror stuff, but way back when in 2008, what was the creative process like? Do you remember Stephanie taking a more active role and Vince taking a more hands off approach? Or was this just a moment in time?
No, it's just a moment in time. And look, from day one till today, you always have to think long term. You always are looking for long term suggestions and things to work backwards from. It's much easier. And again, when you are the creative person that has to start with a blank sheet of paper, I understand the frustration. I really do. However, that's your job. So you start with a blank sheet of paper and you come up with ideas and you come up with things. Whether sometimes the worst thing for a creative person is to know of the restrictions that you have. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true because you are now putting limits on your creativity. You are thinking, okay, I can't do this, I can do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, can't do that, versus, okay, if I had no limitations at all, here are the suggestion of the things that we would do. So you go with that, and then as you get there and you look at it long term, some of these things will work, some won't, but they're going to spawn other ideas, and it's going to help you to work. I couldn't start with a blank sheet of paper. My life depended on it anymore. Um, it's tough, and where for me personally, I'm best at give me something to work off of, and I'll make it better. And I'll be able to work off of your idea and tweak it and fine tune it and make it work. So to the people that maybe had to start with a blank piece of paper, I can see the frustration. But for everything else, it's if you don't have that long term plan, then you have nothing to go on. And if you're just look, if you're just waiting for Vince to come in and tell you what to do,
Right.
go home, get out. You don't want to work. It's like have something for him when he does walk in. And he may change everything you have, but you got to have something for him. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Let's talk about Ric Flair. He's going to be appearing on June 7th at the NWA show at the Phillips Arena to be inducted into the NWA Wrestling Hall of Fame alongside the Midnight Express, Tommy Rich, Nikita Koloff, and the Iron Sheik. Jim Cornette will be giving the speech to induct Flair. So even if there won't be many fans at the show, it'll probably still be a cool moment. The NWA's put together a huge deal for Flair to appear in a farewell tour at their events, and WWE must have approved because this week they sent a letter to all other NWA member promoters. The idea here is that the NWA can book Flair for a 2.5 hour meet and greet for sessions of a maximum of up to 200 people. The idea is Flair's back to work after retiring and having his last official match in WWE at WrestleMania earlier in the year. I guess this was inevitable. Do you remember hearing the news that Flair's going to be making some appearances outside the WWE? And how do you think that struck Vince?
I don't mean to sound negative in this. It's just that there were so many times and so many special circumstances and things to make things work out for Rick on Rick's behalf and for his benefit that it all kind of runs together. Oh, Rick had his last match. Well, okay, which last match are you talking about? You talking about the last match where he retired and went into the Hall of Fame in WWE? You talking about the last match in TNA? You talking about the last match with Hogan? Or are you talking about the last match that he had over here? You're talking about the last match where he apparently died 3 times in the match, whatever it is. That there were so many of those, that I I vaguely remember it, but they kind of run together after a while. So, Rick coming back and doing these things, it's like, okay, great, go do it, Rick, have at it. And allowing him to do that and saying, yes, go for it. Have no problem with it.
Well, as you might imagine, the deal fell apart immediately after the announcement.
What?
So no more Ric Flair at NWA events. Jim Duggan in this era was getting his contract restructured.
Why did it fall apart?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not exactly, it became who said, she said, but the fellow who put the deal together, Bob Trowbridge, says that WWE actually pulled him from the appearance. He wrote, "It's truly a sad action on their part, as the main people injured by WWE's seeming petulance is the wrestling fan."
Is this the guy that was the attorney for the NWA that was selling the fake insurance policies?
Um, Boy,
Was he an attorney for the NWA?
I'll be honest, I don't really know what you're talking about.
Okay. What do you know if he was? I think he was the attorney for the NWA that was.
He's an attorney in Charlotte. Yes.
Yeah, and if you joined the NWA, then you got an insurance policy that covered all of your events. It wasn't real,
Oh, I
something like that.
I
Yeah,
don't know anything about it. I think he's a criminal defense attorney.
he should be.
All right. Sure to send that cease and desist to Chris Prichard.
I just said he should be. I mean, he's an attorney.
Okay. Cool. I hope he's happy and doing well.
Good for him.
Duggan's getting his contract restructured. It's being switched to a Legends deal, which isn't going to provide for a weekly downside, but can work on a per show basis. It enables him to take indie bookings and book his own appearance without clearing it with the office, which the full time wrestlers aren't allowed to do. What in the world was Jim Duggan doing with the company here in 2008?
I have no idea. Jim was just coming in and doing things and doing Legends appearances and things of that nature. This was kind of around the time that the Legends were starting to do Legends deals and get guys under contract to be able to do appearances and things of that nature.
What's interesting is to take a look at the ratings in this era and just what was registering with fans and what wasn't. And as much as we, as the hardcores listening to this, want to look back and say, I don't know about that money idea. Vince's announcement about the draft and the money gains 803,000 viewers. It's ridiculous. And sometimes even a great match like Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels loses 15,000 viewers. I know that, for a long time, wrestling fans and people in and around the industry, they've been obsessed with ratings, but sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. Like Shawn Michaels in a match on TV loses 15,000. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Well, I think that this is the long-standing myth that wrestling matches get ratings, stories get ratings,
That's right.
and if you have a really good story around a really good match, then that's going to get a rating. I don't subscribe to the oh my God, if you put this dream match on, that it's going to get a rating. Unless it has a story and it's interesting characters that are involved in the story and you're invested in the story, you're not really going to, it's not going to mean that much, or at least have really good characters. So it's just, man, story and personal issues will always outdo titles and all those other things.
Well, somebody who won't be outdone is our friends at Game Time. And right now, this time of year, you can get the best deal you've ever gotten on some MLB tickets. I've had such a great time at baseball games growing up. I went with my dad, I went with my uncle, I went with my grandfather. And it really is America's pastime. I don't know why, but I can't help but think about all the trips to the ballpark whenever I go now. And I'm excited that I've had the opportunity to take my girls. In this season, if you're thinking about going down to the game, let me just remind you that Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for all of Major League Baseball. That means that you're going to get your tickets faster and even easier. And as a reminder, the prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and even their lowest price guarantee, Game Time really eliminates the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And it's not just baseball tickets. I should mention you can use this for any kind of sports or concerts or comedy or theater tickets. I've used it for almost every one of those. I've told the story before that my daughter wanted to go see, what's her name? Boy, I'm going to get in trouble for not remembering. Anyway, she wanted to go to this concert at the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville, and it was completely sold out. I got plenty of radio hookups in Huntsville, so I asked, hey, man, got any? And it says it's sold out. Oh, no, man, we didn't get any comps for this. It's the fastest sellout in Orion history. Guess who had tickets on the front row? Yeah, Game Time. Not only that, it was a fraction of what everybody else paid. That Game Time guarantee is the real deal. See, the way it works is if you find a cheaper ticket in the same row and section, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So they're not just going to give you the best deal. They're going to beat the best deal out there by 10% guaranteed. And they've even got these flash deals and in-app deals. You can save up to 60% by buying last minute like that. They'll even do zone deals where you choose your section and Game Time will choose the seats. But what's really cool is, unlike some of those other apps, they show you the all-in pricing. When you like that price, they're not adding something on top and you get a big surprise at checkout. And I think we've all taken a look at a seat map and not been sure, like, hey, is that a good seat? Well, you actually get to see a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you click the button. And by the way, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the whole ticketing industry. I'm a big believer in this, and I hope that you'll check it out. This works flawlessly for everything, not just baseball, but they do have a hookup for baseball. Check it out. You're going to dig it. And use our promo code WRESTLE. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code WRESTLE. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code WRESTLE. That's WRESTLE. You'll get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, Bruce, let's talk a little bit about D'Lo Brown. He was with the company from 97 to 03, and he's going to get signed again here in 2008. And it's written here, it's most likely this is part of Vince McMahon wanting more African Americans helping write television. Part of it is there's been a decrease in that demo and the ratings, and the part with Booker and Lashley leaving and any racism controversy, suffering from having folks on the creative team makes them a sitting duck for future controversy if they don't push African Americans. The way this is written, it just comes off so negatively here, Bruce. But how about we like D'Lo Brown because he's good? Is that possible?
Yeah. Yeah. How about he's good, he's competent, and he's a hell of a performer and a hell of a nice guy. So that's the reason. I can't, again, you see all that, and that's somebody who is just looking for anything negative, any kind of negative spin that they can put on something to give it a negative spin. That's all it is.
I thought
D'Lo Brown's a hell of a talent.
Yeah, ta-da. He's good.
Yeah.
WWE settlement to Corey Macklin. I guess he had a lawsuit against the WWE for pulling Jerry Lawler from a Memphis show, and he pulled a lot of talent at the last minute, or WWE did. And I guess the terms of this settlement are sealed, and neither side is allowed to talk about it. But the rumor and innuendo is that the settlement was fairly significant. It's written here, WWE evidently realized they would look bad in a court case where you had a small local business owner in court in Memphis against an out-of-town Goliath who basically, by pulling all the talent from the Sam's Town show at the last minute, cost Macklin his sole show deal, not to mention the pulling of Lawler from the match with Hulk Hogan after they'd spent months building it up, which WWE was fully aware of. It was all done because Vince was mad at Hogan at the time, which is ironic since Hogan just appeared on the 15th anniversary show later. There's nothing new this week on Macklin reopening his promotion on a new station or using that money he received in the settlement. What do you remember, if anything, about this Corey Macklin WWE dust up?
Nobody asked. No, they say that the company knew. The company didn't know. The company didn't know until they had already advertised thing, and they went directly to talent instead of coming through the company, and that was the issue. It was as simple as that. So, them being able to use stuff, and it was more out of Jerry Lawler and the fact that Lawler, was like, hey, this guy did this and all this stuff, and a lot of it was probably, due to Jerry, them going to talent directly instead of going through the company to see if they could do things. So that, to me, that was the issue, and that's all the issue was.
It's written here, Joe Henning was moved from Harley Race's school, where he was originally trained, to Florida Championship Wrestling. Henning is the son of Kurt and was under a developmental contract, but allowed to train at Race's school because Race and Larry would have been friends for 45 years. He greatly resembles his father, at least when it comes to look. If he's half the wrestler his father was in his prime, he'll do well for himself. We know that Curtis Axel will go on to have quite a run with WWE. Why don't you think he achieved more in WWE? Is it just, man, you're following in the footsteps of some pretty big shoes, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I wasn't here for when I came in. He left shortly after, so I don't really know what the issues were with him beforehand. I know that he had a great deal of promise, and I actually thought that he was a hell of a performer in the ring and out of the ring. A lot of charisma. The problem always comes with, if you're the son or daughter of one of the greatest of all times, you're going to be compared to them. Whether you like it or not, whether that's fair or not, you are going to be compared to those who came before you, especially when you are coming from one of the greatest of all time. So it's tough on somebody to do that. And I thought that Joe always had an upside. I thought he was a hell of a talent. And I couldn't tell you, man, what happened with him here. But I do know at this time, in 2004, 2005, during that time, that, man, he was somebody that we were looking at because he did have the attributes. He was a natural athlete. He had a good look, and obviously he had the pedigree.
No doubt he did. And we had some pretty fun moments with him in his WWE tenure. Let's talk about another name from way back in the day, Carlito. It's written here, Carlito is once again unhappy with WWE and his lack of push, particularly after he and Morella lost to Crime Time on the June 9th show. It seemed to Locke they were going to get the tag titles, but it never materialized, even though they had the best out-of-the-ring chemistry of any team in the company. When the decision was made to put the tag titles on DiBiase and a mystery partner, he was upset. Although it goes back more than a year, he gave notice at the end of last year, but Vince talked him into staying, saying he would get a bigger push. But when that push never happened, he got upset. The Raw creative team has given him conflicting stories about his long-term future, and he's sensing Bryan may just be looking or isn't interested in pushing him more. Let's talk a little bit about Carlito. Do you remember him being frustrated here in 2008?
Yeah, I think that Carlito hit a point where he was very frustrated in the way that he was being used, or lack of use, if you will. And that happens with all performers. You know, everybody gets in a point where you can't be on top all the time, and you're going to have peaks and valleys. So, yeah, I think that Carlito had hit a point where he was a little frustrated with where he was in the pecking order, if you will, and voiced that frustration. That's not unusual. That's something that happens with all great talents all the time. So, uh, definitely happened.
They're talking about, hey, what should he do? And one of the suggestions is maybe he could try to get moved to ECW. Since he was a high profile performer, maybe he'd be a bigger player on that roster. But the concern there might be, since they tour with Raw, what are his house show paydays going to look like? Because it's going to be pretty crowded if it's ECW and Raw on the same tour. And Raw's is loaded. It's the A show. But if he were to be on SmackDown, maybe he would have a better shot on the house shows. And there's a feeling, and this is what's written, that Michael Hayes, if he's given an opportunity to have him, would at least start him out with a push and allow him to sink or swim. And the heel side on SmackDown is pretty bad when you've got Chavo and Mark Henry seemingly as the top heels behind Edge and MVP. The negative in all this is if Vince takes a different tack towards him than last time, and he asks for a release and he gives it to him, and that means he'll wind up in Puerto Rico or TNA. That was a real gamble, I suppose, right? Like, on the one hand, if you go complain about your spot and your positioning with Vince, you want to stay with the company. You just want to get bumped up. But if Vince says, hey, we tried, it didn't work out. Sorry, you're not happy. There's the door. That's a real risk, is it not?
Sure. I mean, look, if you're unhappy and you don't want to be there, then go. Okay, and leave. Or ride it out and fight it out and rise back to the top. It is that simple, and it's frustrating, and it's for a talent to be in a place where you feel as though I'm going nowhere, but you have to, you've got to work your way through it. And again, I think a lot of people would say, yeah, easier said than done. But at the same time, it's you got to do it. You've got to work through it, not give up. Because if you give up and you stop and you just say, oh well, that's what it is, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's pretty much what it is.
He makes the headlines again here, his unhappiness, because he's sent on a tour to promote the South American tour that's coming up about 6 weeks later. So they're going to send him down to, as you would say, Chile. And when he's there, he's asked about Triple H being married to Stephanie. And of course, Carlito says, well, that's the reason he's WWE champion now. So it was a smart move. But not everybody who works in the company has the benefit of just being hand delivered the world championship. And he says it's harder to make it in WWE when you're Latin, especially when someone like Triple H, our supposed champion, doesn't even do media in Chile or Paraguay. And of course, the newsletters catch wind of this and say, well, that'll get him back in the doghouse. Lots of people may say that sort of thing privately, but quote, almost everyone is smart enough to never talk about it publicly. Boy, there's times you can hear about people poking the bear, but that one's got to be near the top of the list.
Well, but you got to ask yourself the question. If you're going to go to South America, you're going to go to Chile, you're going to go to Mexico, you're going to go to Puerto Rico, you're going to go to a South American, heavily Hispanic audience, you want to send Triple H or do you want to send a Carlito? Sorry, I'm going to send Carlito. Carlito speaks the language. Carlito is Hispanic. And that's someone who is going to get a lot more representation because simply from the standpoint, he speaks the language. So to me, that's a no-brainer and kind of silly to say that because you downplay yourself when you say that. You're saying, oh, I'm not as good as him. Well, why are we sending you there then? You are as good. You are, plus you're Hispanic, and this gives you an opportunity to shine. And I've never understood that with people. It's like, put yourself over. You spend more time getting yourself over than knocking others.
There's a conversation that happens in the newsletter that says the producers meeting referred to a few weeks back here regarded a feeling from the older wrestlers that Raw's declining numbers were due to too many pre-taped, scripted promos and less in-ring. Of course, wrestlers are going to come up with that. I don't think that's the answer. Although personally, I think both companies overdo the scripted backstage promos. Getting ratings turned around is very difficult in the modern environment and won't happen without the creation of one or two new hot stars who are headliners challenging for the main title. Adding more wrestling and less talking, if it builds angles stronger, may lead to slight buy rate increases, and it's not going to turn around ratings. As far as the idea of doing it, to me, I think shows should be different each week and less predictable. I think it shouldn't be so cookie cutter of every match is 2 to 5 minutes, except where main eventers are involved. I mean, this ratio, if you will, of how much gaga, we'll call it, and how much in-ring wrestling, how much time spent wrestling is a big discussion when you're trying to put together a show. Is there a best practice, or is it all just feel for each individual show?
It's story. It's what are your stories that you're telling and how best to tell those stories. The ideal situation is to have a combination of both. But everything in the ring should have a story based around it. And if you're going to, just put matches on for matches' sake, guys, that ain't going to work. And it is, it's been proven time and time again. And I will go back to, even when I was TNA and I used to listen to the Spike guys go, oh my God, it used to come into the truck with a stopwatch if we started the show with a promo. And they go, 21 minutes and we haven't had any action. Ratings would come in, and those 21 minutes would be the highest rated of the entire show. So it's a mix. Look, if it's good backstage stuff and it's good talk, then it's going to equal good ratings. It's good action mixed in with that, it's going to equal good ratings. And if it's not as compelling and the audience doesn't want to stay, then the ratings aren't going to be as good. There's no silver bullet. There's no, this is how you do it one way. It's a combination. It's a happy medium and a happy mix to have the right amount in every single show, depending upon the stories you're telling, is going to depend on what you're telling and how you're telling.
What do you make of the comment that what we need to turn ratings up, to get ratings to tick up, is to make a new star or two? I know wrestling fans are always looking for new. That's something that JR is always talking about, that wrestling fans love new. They want new. Do you think that, the whole, hey, we need another star? I mean, I know you're always focused on making stars, but how important is that to get to the next level, if that makes sense?
It's constant. That's a constant in this business. You are constantly in need of creating new stars. And if you don't, it just you cannibalize yourself, and nothing's going to work. So yes, without a doubt, you have to constantly reinvent. You have to constantly be building from underneath up top to create new superstars and new stars underneath as well. That's just a constant. That's called business. You have to be able to reinvent and continue to grow, otherwise you die.
Let's take a look at where we are with the main event scene. It's written here that every SmackDown World Title match on pay-per-view since 2006 has either had Batista, Edge, or Undertaker in it. And since 2002, the creation of that second world title, the quote-unquote big gold belt, every Raw title match since 2002 at this point has either had Triple H, Cena, or John Orton in it.
John Orton?
And John Cena or Randy Orton in it. That's pretty crazy when you think about it, that the SmackDown title, always about Batista, Edge, or Undertaker. The Raw title, always around Triple H, Cena, and Orton. As a wrestling fan watching during that time, it did feel like John Cena and Randy Orton headlined about 400 pay-per-views in a row against each other. Was that
that's untrue, but yes, they were the focal point. They were the top stars at the time. They were the focal point. That's where the money was, and that's who was drawing the money and carrying it at the time. And when you look at Okay, you go back to Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. You can say the same thing during that period of time. You can go back to Hulk Hogan, and it depends on the time. Who are your top stars at the time? If there were only four guys in that mix, and again, you also weren't doing pay-per-views every month from the same brand. You would have a Raw pay-per-view, then you would have a SmackDown pay-per-view during this time. So they were separate. So it wasn't like that was every single month. Every single month, it was every other month. And so it's not as if you compare it to today, where every month it's everybody is involved in it. It wasn't that way at that time. It was every other month, and you had separate pay-per-views. You had a Raw pay-per-view, you had a SmackDown pay-per-view, and then every once in a while we would do everybody on it, but it was separate brands and separate brand matches on those shows.
I'm not pretending that I understand wrestling creative. I am just trying to learn, though. Like I've heard people say on some level, you start with, okay, here's our heels and here's our baby faces. Is there throughout any point in wrestling, we can even go back to Houston. So I'm not asking for the WWE way necessarily, but when you're trying to figure out our top guys, here's our main event guys. It does feel like, for better or worse, based on those stats I just rattled off, there's like three top heels and three top baby faces. Do you need one? Do you need two? Does it need to be four? I mean, obviously, you want everybody to be as over as they are, or as they can be. But when you're trying to formulate a show, you're trying to thread a story, and you're trying to say, okay, we need this many segments with our top guys. On some level, if they became an algebra equation and there weren't names attached and they were just X, Y, and Z, how many of those variables, if you will, do you need?
Well, it's not an algebra question, and it is. It's real people and it's real feeling. Is we were had a discussion with some folks today about AI. It's AI is great. AI can create a lot of different things, but what it can't create is emotion. And when you are looking at what do you need to draw, you need a star and you need someone that can emotionally connect with the audience, whether that is from a standpoint of the audience loves them and wants to get behind them and help them, or the audience hates them and wants to see them be defeated. And that's emotion. And that is the intangible that makes people get up, get in their car, drive to the arena, pay money to come in and see that event, to see either my guy win or my guy or the other guy get his butt kicked. So it's the emotion. It may be one, two. Obviously, you want as many stars as you could possibly get. You want to have, a whole lineup of stars, but you always need at least one that's the attraction. Who is there that one guy that you can put on the marquee and they don't care who they're facing, what it is. I just want to see that one guy. And that's the attraction. So you always need an attraction and you always need strong story. That is what has always been the business from day one. And for it to succeed and for it to prosper, that's what it will continue to need.
Talk to me a little bit about the angle that we do with Vince McMahon, where we're attempting to finish off the 2008 draft episode. It's June 23rd in San Antonio, and we're going to try to kill Vince McMahon. Now, we tried to do this in 2007. We blew up his limo. We remember what happened afterwards and why we didn't continue that course. But after all this McMahon and the McMahon's Millions angles, we do this set collapse bit where the set falls on Vince McMahon and we're going off the air noting that he's breathing, but that his legs can't move. And we know that nothing actually landed on him. It's story, but my goodness, another Vince McMahon death angle a year after the exploding limousine. Is this too much of the good stuff? What do you remember?
I hated it.
Seems really cheesy.
Just hated it. I just hated it. When you visualize things, when you talk about things and you can visualize something and you think, oh man, this is how it's going to be. This is going to be great. And then the practicality of trying to explain your vision to somebody else for them to actually make it a reality and make it happen. A lot gets lost in translation. And then just just sheer execution and being safe and trying to do something. It's we tried something. I don't think it worked. I didn't think it was well executed, and I don't know. I just not a fan. Didn't really care for it.
It's written here, presumably the angle will be the build to pay off Who Tried to Kill Mr. McMahon, which is a spinoff, a parody, an homage, if you will, to Who Shot JR. It's a pretty big time TV show named Dallas back in the 80s. Is that the inspiration? We were going to do a Who Done It with Who Tried to Kill Vince McMahon?
Yeah, that's always been a look, as far as cliffhangers in television. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good one, man. Who done it? And I think Who Shot JR was the epitome of cliffhangers, and then they shit the bed with their next next season because they didn't know how to follow it up. And you get yourself into that all the time. It was kind of like who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And like I did it for The Rock. Like, oh my god, this is horrible. This fucking sucks. Yeah, you get yourself into something that you visualize and you do it, and then you go, okay, we're gonna do this. Can't do it with that guy. Or things happen, man. Life just happens. And this particular one, I just thought was a really poor execution as far as what it was, and I didn't think it paid off.
Let's talk about a real life circumstance. The timing of you guys doing this comes off pretty bad if you're a hardcore wrestling fan who watches TNA, because you're at least familiar with the fact that they had behind the scenes a real tragedy happened at one of their Mississippi pay-per-views on June 8th. It was a fellow who worked with the cast and crew putting together the sets and all that. And he has a really tragic fall that results in his loss of life. And that happens on June 8th. And now we're paying this Vince McMahon, a set collapsed on him just a couple weeks later, like 15 days later. But I'd like to think by the time you guys had those wheels in motion, you had no idea that this had happened. When do you remember hearing about TNA's tragedy?
I honestly I don't even remember hearing about it until maybe afterwards. But again, this had been in place for so long.
Right.
This was 2 months getting to this place. So it wasn't like, oh, hey, cool. Somebody died. Let's recreate that. Anybody that thinks that is a moron.
Yes.
Okay. And if you think that, if you wrote that, if you insinuated that, if you think that, you're a moron. This was in the works for months, before we actually did it. And in no way, shape, or form would we ever try to capitalize on such a tragedy as that. That's something I will never forget. In early 90s, I think we were in Bushkill, New York, and one of our lighting grids fell, and it fell from one end and took out a lot of the audio equipment and everything. And thank God, there was only one person that was injured, and they were only injured. I say that because it's much better than obviously death. But that was such a tragedy to us that it was like, oh my gosh, this accident happened. So in no way would we ever want to make fun of something like that, or try to capitalize off of a tragedy like that. That's silly, and it's silly for anybody to suggest that.
Let's talk a little bit about the draft and how everything really gets shook up here. We see Triple H, who's the WWE champion. He's going to get moved to SmackDown. Batista is going to move over to Monday Night Raw. We're even going to flip flop announcers. Jim Ross will join Mick Foley on SmackDown. Michael Cole is going to be going to Raw to work with Jerry Lawler. Other changes are Rey Mysterio moving from SmackDown, where he's been his entire WWE career, to now Monday Night Raw. Jeff Hardy's been a Raw lifer, and now he's moving to SmackDown. CM Punk is going to take his Money in the Bank briefcase to Raw. And, there's lots of moving and shaking here. And I know anytime this happened, we were really big on we don't want it to get out and we don't want it to leak. And That leads to hard feelings if the talent doesn't know that my travel schedule is about to change. Does anything in 2008 stand out as being noteworthy, or there's some sort of story involved that you recall?
No, I guess this is this one where JR got boo boo face because he got moved and didn't know.
Yes.
That'd probably be the only one.
Yeah.
But nobody knew. And that's why Vince wanted. Vince wanted a genuine reaction. So everybody, look, hey, everybody was told that you could be drafted, pay attention, react accordingly. If you're upset, be upset. You're upset that, oh shit, man, you realize I'm not going to be traveling with my buddies anymore and this is going to disrupt my schedule. Be upset. If you're happy, like, yes, I got Fridays off now, whatever, then be happy. But it wasn't to get anybody. It wasn't to, oh, hey, let's see whose schedule we can disrupt. It was what was best for business and to try and get genuine, real reaction.
I'm sure though that well, there's going to be a lot of stress on the creative room and the creative folks in that room because they're going to feel their phones are probably blowing up with guys who want to know, like, hey, am I
Sure.
going here? Am I going there? Like, this is a time when I'm sure being in creative is very frustrating.
Yeah, and there were only a couple of us that knew. So while the creative teams as a whole had a general idea, not everybody knew all the drafts. They didn't know all the draft picks and who was going where, and especially for significant names and things of that nature. There was, that was kept very, very tight to the vest, which is why it didn't get out.
It's written that when the whole idea of switching announcers was brought up, Vince was negative about the decision to move JR. And it's written, Kevin Dunn brought up what would Ross's reaction be if it wounded up being done. And that amused Vince to no end, and it was done. So it's written here that the whole thing that upset JR may have actually been a suggestion from Kevin Dunn. What do you make of that?
The reason it was done was to give Michael Cole more exposure on a different show, and to get Michael Cole working with King and get Michael Cole exposed to a bigger audience. Michael was still young in this
Yes.
and learning as well. So it was a chance to give Michael different experience on a different show to a different audience. And while the thought of JR overreacting and taking it personally and thinking that all of the last 6 months of everyone's lives involved in that centered around what his reaction was going to be that one night, is preposterous and just simply not true. It was, here's this. Now, when you sit there and you go, okay, how's JR going to react? And you get a chuckle out of that, that's real life. But we got to chuckle out of other people, and their reactions as well. And thinking of, oh God, man, I don't want to hear from this guy, after this or whatever. Um, but we did it to keep it close to the vest and to make it as real as it possibly could be. And I get it, JR probably felt that I should have known, and that, by God, I deserve to know because I do this. Okay, all that may be true, but the boss didn't want anybody to know, and that included you. No conspiracy, no um, plot or conspiracy for the last 6 months of let's get good old JR. That's ridiculous.
Michael Hayes is starting back as a part of creative in this era, and it's written that Brian may not have McMahon's ear as much as he normally does. And maybe that's why there has been more criticism about the amount of backstage stuff that was happening before. Maybe that was Brian's influence. I mean, that's certainly what's written here, that perhaps a certain contingent of folks in the wrestling business felt like Brian maybe spent not enough time on in ring stuff, too much time on the backstage stuff. What do you make of that?
That's people that don't understand the workings of what creative does. They don't have a clue. Never been. This is people on the outside that think they know how it's run, that have never been in the room, that have never done it. So they, oh, well, Michael Hayes is back. So I hear these rumblings. So it must be him. Must be him because he's a wrestling guy. Come on. No, this is people making up shit based on what they're watching and what they think could possibly be happening. Or they know a guy who knows a guy who once wrestled, who saw Michael Hayes in a bar, and says, this must be what it is, without any knowledge of the situation. Michael and Brian were on different shows, folks. We're on different shows. So I don't even know what to say to that other than it's just it's somebody making up and hypothesizing about shit they don't have any real information about.
Let's talk a little bit about some other things that are in the news and notes here. I guess there was a suggestion that maybe Brian thought it might be fun if Ted DiBiase would buy a draft pick somehow, but that winds up getting shut down. They're talking about the trade here, Triple H for Batista. And based on the WWE pecking order, that's a positive for SmackDown since Triple H, Undertaker, and Cena are considered the company's big three, with Batista and Shawn Michaels right behind them. Would you agree with that? That those are probably your top five guys here in this
I'd say
era?
during that time, it probably were, yeah.
It's also written that as of Thursday, Batista was strongly considered, and Triple H discussed at meetings a Batista heel turn to build for Batista versus Cena at WrestleMania 25. That would have been 2009, of course. And it's mentioned here that that match was actually discussed for WrestleMania 24. And when it didn't happen, it sort of became, okay, we'll do that next year. Do you remember that being discussed? Cena
I
and
don't.
Batista? Okay.
I don't. Not that somebody couldn't have mentioned it one time, but I don't remember that ever being seriously considered. No.
Talking about the JR thing, he wrote about it on the blog, as you may have imagined. He says, I'm not the kind of man who will phone in a damn thing. So clearly, he's probably not thrilled with this. Do you remember catching any shit from JR about the way this all went down?
I remember him being a little pissed off. That's about it. And again, I think that JR manifested in his mind that it was all that the entire draft was built around humiliating him. I'm sure that's probably what he. Now, again, do I know that? No, that is Bruce hypothesizing what I think JR probably thought because he was upset about it.
Right.
Sure that he was upset that those that he felt he was close to didn't confide in him and say, hey, JR, you're getting traded tonight. But we were told not to.
It says here 2 former major insiders with the company who work closely with both, but more directly with Vince, contacted us immediately saying that Raw should have understood how Vince's mind operated and that by publicly saying he wanted to stay on Raw, it made it a virtual guarantee because of how Vince loves to humiliate him that he would move in the manner he did. I love that people have just decided that he just absolutely wants to torture and pick on JR. The explanation you just gave about Michael Cole couldn't make more sense. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, and again, it's people that don't know, and it's coming from someone who was upset and hurt, probably felt betrayed, and his feelings were hurt. So, man, he's JR will wear his feelings on his sleeve. It, God damn, man. It's it's business. Shit happens, and move on next.
Of course, this doesn't make it any better when JR is invited to jump on the corporate plane to fly from San Antonio to Houston for SmackDown because he's going to be on that show. He was just drafted there. And JR says, no thanks. McMahon, I guess, confronts JR. Says, I just risked my life on this show and ruined my son in law's life, all for the company. Of course, ruin my son in law means, well, I sent him to SmackDown. Do you remember JR not riding the plane? Like anybody who's had to go through an airport like a regular human being like us, boy, when you say no to the corporate jet, you're punishing yourself.
Well, again, I to say that I was there and that I have any idea, a couple things. JR could have already had his ride. It's not that far of a ride.
Yeah.
And sometimes, man, you'd much rather get in a car and drive. I can tell you there were many times that I was offered a ride on the jet that I would have much rather driven. So JR, was driving. That's one thing. But then again, it may have also been in how he reacted to it. And he might have reacted like a petulant child. And no, yeah, I'll get there myself. Who knows? I don't know because I wasn't a part of it. And I think that that's probably someone reading, and whoever gave that information to whoever they gave that information to that made that information public probably wasn't there for that conversation. So they're probably reading a lot into what they heard. Oh, I heard JR was offered to fly on the plane. He told Vince, "Fuck no, I'm not going to ride on your goddamn plane." Who knows? I don't believe. Again, can look at it and go, "Yeah, man, maybe you had a ride." Because that's not as exciting.
Well, I don't know I don't know.
Story.
Probably also not why he didn't do it, because he wrote on the blog, because he wrote a lot in this day. I should have detected something with the demeanor of certain individuals, the writing team and a few of the top brass, which did know, either through their plastic poker faces or the perceived smirk that I thought I might have seen on some of their faces during the day. Boy, he's heated. And you can just tell when you read
He's butthurt.
Yeah. I mean, I think he probably felt like Vince just had a hard on for him. And well, if you can have a hard on for anybody with BlueChew.com, this episode.
I got a solution for that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to be as hard as the summer day is long, then get yourself a Blue Chew and bring that summer heat. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. Now, the process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part, it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Let's talk a little bit about, something besides the draft. We're dropping the $1 million promotion after 4 weeks. The company is going to send out a press release saying that it increased web traffic 28% over the prior month. The total web purchases in the month of April were 1.35 million. Company stock at press time is $15.25. And Vince,
25 seconds.
What's that? $15.25 cents. Sorry. I am thinking about the seconds that Vince spent on CNBC. He's asked by Darren Ravel, first it was boxing that was going to hurt you. Now it's UFC. To what extent are you competing with them? And Vince said, we don't compete. We're entertainment. They're boxing. They haven't hurt us at all. Did you ever perceive UFC to be a rival or competition for you on pay-per-view?
I think, in the beginning, I think that there was thought that UFC may be something that our fans might be interested in. Never boxing. Never, ever, 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 ever considered boxing competition. Different fan base, different. I mean, look, there's crossovers. People like their combat sports and things like that. But we're different. We're just different. We're entertainment, we're sport, we're everything. So I never really I never viewed a pure sport as real competition.
Let's talk a bit about JBL. He started an energy drink here called 418 Energy. The idea was it was supposed to be an energy drink that had an anti-inflammatory agent, and he wanted to get the product placed at golf courses and golf retail shops. He's actually going to go out and hire a staff of 30 sales reps. What do you remember about JBL and 418 Energy?
Well, John and I were partners in this, and it started off with our Mama Juana. It was trying to be billed as liquid Viagra. So long before we had Blue Chew, we had Mama Juana, which was a natural aphrodisiac, and it also had an energy component to it. In the midst of developing Mama Juana, also came up with this formula that was an energy shot with anti-inflammatories in it. So while your 5 hour energies, what have you, had a lot of caffeine and they had a lot of energy elements to it, the it turned out being Layfield Energy. 418 was something that we did for maybe 3 months. We did a first run on them and everything. We went to a golf convention and sold them there. But once we realized that, man, this is for athletes, because a lot of times, guys before they work out, they'll take an energy shot or a cup of coffee and a couple of the White Crosses, the caffeine pills, and then take a couple of Aleve or Advils or something like that, ibuprofen. And we were able to formulate this energy shot that had all of that in it. So it was an energy shot. It was much safer than taking all of that. Didn't have as much caffeine as the 5 hour energies and things of that nature. But when I say I'm not a big energy shot guy, especially in those days, this you would take in the morning and you felt great because it took care of your aches and pains too. And it was a natural anti-inflammatory and it worked great. I mean, the fact that nobody ended up buying the formula from us afterwards was crazy. And then the fact that 5 hour energy did, I would have thought the 5 hour energy would have been really happy to do this, but obviously, I think they're doing okay. And we did that, and we launched the energy drink before we did the Mama Juana, and then we did the Mama Juana after that, and we ran that for about 3 or 4 years, and had our own distribution company in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had the whole nationwide distribution, and had a place in Houston that also sold our products, and that's where we came up with Drank, which was Purple Drank, based on the hip hop world where they would do the syrup, and they called it Drank, Purple Drank. And the partners that we were with in Houston had concocted a relaxation soda and called it Drank. And it was like I don't know, it's kind of like a grape flavored soda, but it would relax you and help you go to sleep. Then we took it and we took the same formula and we put it in shot form and did the first relaxation shots on the market. And that probably was that was actually our best product. And then the Layfield Energy was the second best product, but the Drank was incredible, man. It would help you sleep, make you feel good, and all perfectly legal.
You and JBL tried to sell legal lean.
What?
You were on that lean. You were trying to sell lean
What's lean?
legally.
I don't know what lean is.
Purple Drink.
Well, it's called a drink. In Houston, okay, in Houston, where it was big and all that shit, it was called Drink.
I'm very. It's also lean.
Okay.
I just can't believe we're having this conversation on Something to Wrestle. Wow.
Why?
Have you ever been
That's
sipping?
what we did.
Have you ever been sipping on some scissor?
No,
Did you ever drink lean out of 2 styrofoam cups?
I don't even know what lean is, so no.
Okay.
I drank.
Purple Drink?
Yeah, in the can.
Oh, in a
Drinking prime.
can.
Drinking prime right
Yeah,
now.
there you go. Do you think you could get Logan to do a purple drink variant of Prime.
Maybe.
Oh, how about that? Vince McMahon goes into full Mr. McMahon mode at the Lifetime Achievement Award reception for Promax, the DBA conference, for his work in global marketing, advertising, and promotion. And when he receives the trophy and he's on stage, he says, I truly deserve this. It's probably something you won't hear everybody else say. During this entire weekend, which is a fun little event, they're asking him how he came up with the $1 million giveaway idea. He has a great response. He says, that process is called insanity. Do you remember when Vince threw the towel in on the $1 million giveaway idea? Were you relieved?
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I liked it while it lasted.
Sure.
It's interesting. So yeah. One less thing to worry about.
Analysts are predicting that the WWE stock is going to have 528 million in revenue, which would be 59 million in profit for 08. As a frame of reference, the 07 numbers were 485 million in revenue and 52 million in profits. Let's talk about June 30th. It's a Monday Night Raw, and we've got some big news with the ratings. We did a world title change, and it gives a 3.51 rating, 5.1 million viewers. That's a big doggone deal. The SmackDown the 3 days before, did a 2.2 rating and over 4 million viewers. When do you remember people stop giving the rating and start saying the number of viewers? Because these days we hear less about the rating and we hear more about the number of viewers. But once upon a time, we used to hear the rating and the number of homes. When do you remember there was a change or a transition? Do you recall?
I couldn't tell you. I think that there was a big deal during the Monday Night Wars. Ratings was all the craze, and what was the rating? Oh my God, what was the rating? How do you do? What was the rating? And nobody understood what those ratings. I think that it's much easier to understand how many viewers, and even that is, it's a formula. you know, 3.2 people in a household, so a household is 3 point. Oh, who the hell knows? I think that DirecTV had the best idea of actually um, being able to count, how many people were watching what and at what time. They had that capability. I worked with a company in 2008 and 2009 that took to the Nielsen Corporation a chip, basically a device that, you figured in 10 years would be able to be in every single television set that was sold. That there was a uh, study done that, people buy a new television at least once every 10 years. Okay. Um, so you had this 10-year period where the idea was to go in and put this chip in, which there already was a chip in one make of television sets that a lot of people had in their homes, that they were recording data and taking data on what you were watching. And we had it to where you could put it in, and we wanted to then sell this information to Nielsen and go directly to producers and studios and the stations and say, hey, we can tell you how many people watched, how long they watched, where they went, everything. I mean, but 100% accurate. It wasn't based on a diary. It wasn't based on randomness. It was based on what they were watching on their TV. All this information was on this chip. And Thank God we did. Um, but the television maker that had installed that was collecting this information, got in a lot of trouble and had to recall a lot of those televisions and things of that nature. And just the recall really didn't work because like, who's going to bring back their TV? You know what I mean? And they also didn't want to make public that there was this there was this actual collection of information, and they just stopped doing it. So look, it's out there, and I think that producers, studios, stations, everybody wants to, they really want to know, but to really get that information is far more intrusive into people's lives than anybody wants to admit and that anybody really wants to do. And the deeper that we got into it, the more um, the crazier it got. But it was a survey company that had developed this, and they found out that, well, you can track everybody's usage really easy. And I truly believe that they're doing it now without us knowing it. Every streaming service, every cable operator, they all know exactly what we're watching, how long we're watching it, and when. They know everything. I guarantee it because I know it's out there.
Let's talk a little bit about the tapings here for SmackDown in Houston. Of course, JR is going to show up about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, much later than he would normally, but still a few hours before showtime. He's going to have a private meeting with Vince, and everybody seems fine when the meeting's over. JR is going to go on his blog and say that he shouldn't have written what he wrote. He should have waited a day. Allegedly, he apologized to Vince when he saw him. And yes, there were some feelings about that, but JR is being told by Vince, we're trying to make SmackDown a bigger priority, as you see, with Triple H being here on the show as well. And Triple H is actually going to refer to JR as the greatest announcer in the history of the business. So, whatever there was any hurt feelings around JR, all that is put to bed before we do our very first SmackDown together. This is also the return of Michael Hayes to SmackDown. And it's written here in the Observer. The first thing he does was get together with Mark Henry and apologize to him, and then apologize to all the other African American wrestlers. It's written in the Observer that Hayes blamed it on his drinking and told the wrestlers he's now taking Antabuse, a drug that makes you vomit if you touch any alcohol. So this is all an ugly mess, seemingly put to bed here. And
then he puked.
I'm just glad that
sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. Freebird Road, ladies and gentlemen, available on you.
Let's talk about
I don't mean to make light of it.
No, I mean, listen, we both think a lot of Michael, and I'm glad that Michael got a second chance, and I think everybody deserves a second chance. And I can't imagine WWE without Michael Hayes, and I can't imagine Michael Hayes without WWE. Let's talk a little bit about Mike Goldberg. This is written in the Observer at the time. A funny Mike Goldberg related story to 05 when he was recruited by WWE to take the lead announcing role on Raw for when they went back on the USA Network. He said that even after he turned the offer down, Vince called him personally and left a message. And even though it's almost 3 years, he was so thrilled to have Vince call him that he's never erased the message. But he did say he wouldn't have no-showed the UFC for any amount of money in the world because the UFC was always good to him. I know we tried Mike Adamle and Mike Goldberg and a few other folks through the years, but do you think Mike Goldberg in the WWE could have worked?
No. I don't. I think that Mike Goldberg is a very good play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know how Mike, when I said no off quickly, I don't know. I don't know if Mike would have been able to tell the stories and be a storyteller the way that we storytell.
Let's get to Night of the Champions. Here we are. The show gets a pretty good review here. 45.9% thumbs up, 41.5% thumbs in the middle, 12.6% thumbs down. Most people agree the best match is Triple H and John Cena, followed by Edge and Batista. Let's get into the matches. We're at the American Airlines Center here in Dallas. Raw the next night is in Oklahoma City.
Oh, that's fresh.
That's fresh. Jeff Hardy is going to pin MVP in the dark match with a swanton. Hardy's going to get a huge reaction, and the reaction is said to be bigger than a lot of folks who were on the actual pay-per-view. So we're starting off pretty hot here. And then we get going with Miz and John Morrison retaining the tag titles, beating Fit Finlay and Hornswoggle. Even though the first two matches involve talent on the ECW roster, they have Jim Ross and Mick Foley announce them. What'd you think of those two tag teams, Miz and John Morrison together? And what can you tell us about Fit and Hornswoggle as a tag team?
Well, first of all, Miz and Morrison, I thought they were an excellent team. I think that they worked really well together. Two young guys that gelled, and they were. I don't think they've ever really properly gotten their flowers. Miz obviously has through the years, but I think as a team, these guys really worked. They were friends, and they just worked great together. They were a true team and very talented. So I liked them a lot.
Let's also talk a little bit about the next match, because we've got Matt Hardy and Chavo Guerrero for the U.S. title. And they actually give this one a little bit of time, 9 minutes and 21 seconds. It's a solid second match on a pay-per-view. Matt's going to get the win, 2 3/4. And the next match will be for the ECW title. But before we move on, we started with the tag titles, and now we're going straight to a U.S. title. Night of the Champions, we're living up to it. What'd you think of this concept of we're going to start with title matches and just load them all up for this Night of the Champions concept? I had a feeling you'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I compare it. Well, it means nothing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in TNA when they would have the cage matches, and every match was a cage match. Drove me banana, because by the third cage match, you've seen it. They've done everything you can do in a cage, and you get to your main event, it means nothing. So I get the novelty of it, but I think that, and this is just for me, we do it. It's obviously the audience likes it, I think. But I do think that it diminishes the championships themselves when every single match is a championship match, because yes, it's good. Every match has stakes on it. Every match means something. But I don't know. For me, it's not as good.
Yeah, listen, I understand what you're saying. It's too much of the good stuff. Let's talk about the ECW title match. It's a 3-way dance. Mark Henry is going to win the ECW title here. It's a 3-way with Kane and Big Show. Man, on paper, I get why you'd want to see 3 behemoths, but in execution, this is probably not what I think of when I think of a 3-way dance. That's a lot of meat. What'd you think?
Big meaty men slapping meat. No, it's not your typical 3-way, without a doubt. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be a train wreck of 3 of the biggest, strongest talent that you had colliding. So if you thought you were going to get your typical 3-way match, you were sadly mistaken. And the idea of these guys colliding, what are the monsters going to do, when they're put in the ring? That was the idea. And to me, it delivered in that. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't meant to be pretty. It was meant to be 3 big guys going at it and fighting it out for the championship. And to me, I thought that it succeeded.
Well, there's no doubt it succeeded in that. There's one fun line in the match, if you're on Mike Adamley alert. And I know that, we didn't know back
Mike's
then
nice
what was
guy.
going on with Mike. Now we know that, man, Mike was undiagnosed with some really tough stuff. But before we knew that at the time, fans were just jumping on him to call Jeff Hardy Jeff Harvey or something silly. Well, we had one moment. When Kane is down in front of the table, the announce table, Mike Adamle said, Kane down in front of our broadcast thing. And Taz goes, Mike, it's a table. And I don't know why, but Taz saying, Mike, it's a table made me laugh.
Well, it's a thing.
It is a thing as well. They're going to do the first
He wasn't
Cena.
wrong.
CM Punk is going to come out and do a promo, and he's saying that he hopes that both Cena and Batista win so he can use his briefcase to challenge for it. Next up, we've got Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes, who are going to wind up as the World Tag Team Champions, beating Bob Holly and Cody Rhodes here. Chat me up here. DiBiase's coming out to the song Priceless. He's going to claim his partner hadn't arrived yet. He needs 10 more minutes. His request is denied. So they're starting the match 2-on-1. When, what do you know, DiBiase announces, it's actually Cody Rhodes, who's my secret partner, and they're the new champions. What do you think of that creative?
I mean, I thought it was good for the time, and it was a way to get two of the biggest names in the business, and Ted DiBiase and Dusty Rhodes, and have their offspring teaming together. To me, it worked. I liked the team. I like the combination of those guys, and I like the combination of the history of their fathers. To the same thing as we discussed earlier on when we were talking about Joe Hennig. I don't know at this stage in their careers, being, their father's sons in the business, it's just a tough shoes to step into. So they did the best they could.
JBL's in the luxury boxes here, and he's being interviewed by Todd Grisham. And he says, hey, with Vince McMahon out of commission, I'm now the richest man in WWE. And he's going to rip on the fans for spending money on things they can't afford and then getting foreclosed on. He's going to start ripping on Mark Cuban. And he says Texas hasn't had a sports winner since he left the state. Put over how the Cowboys choked, and they even show Tony Dorsett in the crowd. It's kind of cool. And then we get a cool match, man. Kofi Kingston winning the Intercontinental Championship from Chris Jericho. 11 minutes is what they get here. The crowd is kind of dead for this, and there's even some light boring chants. It's hard to imagine. 2.25 stars. What can you tell us about a very young Kofi Kingston here getting the rub from the elder veteran, Mr. Chris Jericho?
Yeah, Chris was pretty old here at this point in his career. Look, I actually, again, this is another one I thought was great because it took a young star, up and coming Kofi Kingston, and gave him instant credibility by beating somebody like Jericho. And I thought it was great for both guys. And it put Kofi on that pedestal. All of a sudden it made people think, all right, man, some of these new guys that you're feeling the Miz and the Morrisons, you're feeling the Codys and the Ted DiBiase Juniors. And now here's this Kofi Kingston coming in, and ungodly charisma and talent. And it felt good. It felt good to have him in the mix and to be playing with big boys and a guy that had been a former world champion in Chris Jericho, and to beat him in his first opportunity for a championship like this. So I thought the match was good, and I thought what it did for everybody involved was even better.
We should mention that Shawn Michaels is getting involved here. The finish is going to see a lion saw in the walls in the middle. Jericho comes out, and Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler had both noted that Shawn Michaels wasn't there. And then all of a sudden he is there. Jericho's going to release the hold, and he's going to knock Michaels off the apron. Kingston's going to use Trouble in Paradise, the Enziguri type move, to get the pin. And the post-match sees Jericho punch Michaels in the eye once, which is written here as much more effective than a traditional beatdown as far as how they played it up here. What'd you think of the Jericho Shawn Michaels storyline that's brewing here? That's one of the better pieces of creative in this era.
It was tremendous because you know what? So much of it was real. Chris Jericho coming up And you look at Lance Storm and Jericho as the thrill seekers, and you look at Shawn and Marty, and they're very easy to compare to. Jericho was the Shawn Michaels of that group, and they had parallel. It's like they had parallel careers. Shawn and Jericho were a natural to go against each other because I think both of them saw so much of each other in each other. So it was good, and it was also real life. I think Chris had been compared to Shawn Michaels his whole life, and Shawn, I think, was always, "Hey, what do you think about this young up and comer and Chris Jericho when he was coming up?" And it was, yeah, again, it was a natural. It was personal. It felt personal, and they made it even more personal and using Shawn's wife and everything, Rebecca, and it's just, man, this is good stuff.
It
You
is
could
good
feel it.
stuff. I dug it, and I thought it was a great story and told very well. And I really enjoyed Mickey James here. She's going to be in action here and retain the women's title, getting a win over Katie Leah Burchill. What can you tell us about her? We haven't spent much time talking about Miss Burchill.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot to talk about. Katie Lee came over from England. She was part of that whole recruit from the UK, came over and worked in OVW and what have you. Um, Brought her in as Paul Burchell's sister, I believe. But it was good talent, really nice lady. I just think she was lacking it. Not a lot of charisma, and she's kind of lacking on the personality end of it to connect with the audience. Don't know that connection ever really came about.
Well, there's a connection that you have with a great product that I want to spend a few minutes talking about. I'm talking about the amazing kind.
Ooh,
By
love it.
now, most people who are listening to this are familiar with the fact that, well, you've been under the knife more than once in the past 12 months. And one thing that you reach for then, now, and forever is the amazing kind. I know it's helped you knock out some pain and it's even helping you get some sleep too. Tell us about it.
Well, as you're sitting here, you're looking at this graphic and you see the CBD freeze. Amazing. Okay, it's a roll on, and you put it right in the area that hurts. And very soon thereafter, it's going to give you a really nice cooling effect, and your pain is going to dissolve. Same thing with the pain relief fast acting cream, because you just rub that into the area where you're hurting, muscular, and it goes away. Smells great, not overpowering. You're not going to go around smelling like Ben Gay after the fact. You're going to go around smelling good. But most importantly, you're going to be feeling a whole hell of a lot better. And then you say to yourself, well, man, when I go to bed and I get these aches and pains and I just can't sleep, CBN plus CBD, couple drops underneath your tongue, and it's going to help you go to sleep, fall asleep a lot faster, and stay asleep longer. I highly recommend the Amazing Kind because I use it. I use it literally every single day. And you should too, because if you want to feel better naturally, this is the way to go. And the Amazing Kind, if you use our promo code Russell, you're going to get it 20% off. And you can't beat that. You can't beat it because the products are great, they're natural, and they work. So give the Amazing Kind a try. Go and tell them that we sent you. TheAmazingKind.com. Use our promo code Wrestle. Get 20% off. Come on, man. You can't beat that to feel better and help us out. Help them out by
Folks,
helping us out.
Bruce didn't have any copy. He really uses the amazing
I don't.
kind.
I don't.
He just rattled all that off. That was just him telling you his experience. So
Yeah.
don't take our word for it. Trust what we're doing. Go right now to theamazingkind.com and use the promo code Wrestle. Hey, let's talk about the next match. It's Edge and Batista. And there's going to be a horde of interference, but there's something.
Your mother's a whore.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about something that happened in the Observer that jumped off the page to me. You can probably set us straight on this. The crowd turned around for this match. Jim Ross said that Batista had Leviathan-like strength, I guess harkening back to his original wrestling name in OVW, which was Leviathan. I still to this day am, well, not amused, but certainly bemused that Dave Batista came to the power plant at his size and he was probably 50 pounds heavier then and still ripped. And Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker saw him as a bodybuilder, tried to humiliate him, and they joked and ran him off. Yeah, that was brilliant in hindsight, wasn't it? Have you heard that story? Batista tried to get in at the power plant and they didn't see it?
Yeah, I heard that story from Dave Batista.
That's amazing.
Here's the thing that just always amazes me, and I'll go off on the trainers that do this. All right, it used to be the way that, all right, a guy comes in, football player, bodybuilder, whatever, an athlete from another sport, and they want to come in and they want to be a wrestler. They want to train. And the old wrestlers used to, by God, this is real. Folks, it's never been real. Okay. It's not fake in no way, shape, or form. I hate the word fake. It's not fake. Everything that the athletes do hurts, and they're the greatest athletes in the world to perform how they perform. But yet you would have guys that would run people to death, make them do 20,000 squats, make them puke, and do all these other things, and then beat them up. So after you tire them out, then you take them in the ring and you stretch them where they can't fight back. They're told not to fight back. They can't fight back. They don't know what the hell they're doing, and they give their bodies to you, trusting you, which is what we do in our business. And then these guys would abuse them, and truly it was abuse. And then kick them out. I sent that guy down the road, and then that guy goes on to go somewhere else where that didn't happen to them, where they were given an opportunity to actually get in the ring, learn the craft, learn how to work. And if they weren't a great athlete to be able to do all these things, then they were weeded out. But they were given a fair opportunity to get in the ring and to learn versus just get into a warehouse and be humiliated by somebody who had never been there. So that just always kind of, I don't know, just chapped me, because so many guys would have never gotten in the business if you were held to those old standards. Now, when I would go, my brother would beat the hell out of me. He did it out of a way, not just beating the hell out of me. It was, they put holds on you and they would stretch you, but it wasn't to hurt you or to, it was to teach you, okay, when you put this hold on, this is how it feels. These are real holds. This is presented as a contest. So you have to know how the hold feels so you know how to sell it. If you don't know how it feels, then you don't know what the hell to sell. So the holds would be put on for real, and you're showing, okay, this is how you do it for real. And this is how it feels. Now, this is how you do it where you're not going to hurt anybody, but you should still sell it as if you are. And Batista's, came in and he told me the story about the power plant. I kind of chuckled. I said, yeah. I said, you ever dance? A little bit, not a dancer. I said, well, we're going to get you in the ring and put him in the ring with my brother Tom at the warehouse. I said, let's, just move around with him. And Tom got in the ring with him, moved around with him a little bit, locked up with him, had him try a few things also. And Dave could do those things, did it naturally, did it instinctively the very first time that he was in the ring. Then you build on that. We didn't have him run 50 miles and then come back and do 6,000 squats and beat him on the back with a kendo stick as he did them. It was like, okay, does he have the aptitude? Does he have the simple athletic ability to walk around a ring comfortably? And if I push him and he pushes back naturally, okay, does this work? And can he control his strength? And all those things, the answer was yes. And Dave was a great student. And Dave put the hard work in to become the star that he became. And that was evident in wrestling. It's evident in his acting career, in that he puts the work in. He works hard for it. And, I dare say with his acting, if someone had gone in and Dave wasn't a professionally trained actor, but he went in and he tried, and he was a great look, and he learned how to act. So yeah, I just think that's, Gene Anderson used to do that, just beat the hell out of guys. to see if they were tough enough, see if they would come back. And if you came back, then they would beat the hell out of you less until you know, you were just too stupid to quit. And you continue that. And that's how they weeded people out. But I think you lose a lot of potential talent in doing it that way. So I'm not a fan of that. But yes, I definitely did heard that story the day that Dave came in.
3.5 stars is the rating for the match. Edge gets the win. Should mention that at some point we see Vicky Guerrero, Kurt Hawkins, and Zack Ryder come out. Eventually, Vicky's going to pull the referee Mickey Henson out of the ring. Batista's going to throw Edge's shoulder into the ring post. Edge is going to deck the referee Mickey Henson. Chavo's music's going to play. He's going to show up sauntering to the ring wearing a ref shirt. Batista's going to press slam Vicky, throw her onto Hawkins, Ryder, Chavo, and Bam Neely. While all this is going on, Edge grabs the title belt, hits Batista in the head. Chavo jumps in and counts the fall. They steal it. Man, we're trying to make Edge a chicken shit heel, and we got quite a cast of characters here. What do you think of this creative?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And I think that it added, to Edge. And look, Edge isn't an ass kicking heel, but he, with all of these tools around him, the power of Vicky Guerrero, and he had his edge heads, and he had everything around him to make sure that he was successful. But Edge played it off perfectly. Great story, great build of a heel. And I think this was kind of, in a lot of respects, this is when Edge was really coming out and becoming that mega superstar that everybody was looking for with him. But he had a lot of help.
Triple H is going to pin John Cena to keep the title in 19 minutes and 37 seconds here. The live crowd in Dallas is pro Triple H, but Cena, of course, has the kids and the women. And even Meltzer comments on the tan here saying it looks like Triple H fell asleep in a tanning bed, but Cena doesn't appear to tan. That is something that I have noticed that, the bodybuilder era, the Hulk Hogan's, the Ultimate Warriors, even the Triple H's, boy, they are just super, super tan. And then you have this guy with the ultimate bodybuilder type physique in John Cena, not necessarily a huge tanner. Was that not as important to the WWE, or did WWE ever have a preference tanning wise, do you think? Or is that just up to the talent?
It's up to the talent. It's up to the talent what they're comfortable with, and what they want to do. It's I think that John was ripped. John looked great and didn't necessarily need the tan. And there's guys that also look great, but they want to look even better with the tan. The problem becomes is if you are kind of in the middle there, and you can't tone it, then tan it.
There you go.
And that goes back to your old buddy Sting, where he wasn't toned and he needed a tan.
Are you talking about Starrcade 97 right now?
Whatever, whenever the hell they changed the thing because he wasn't tan. I fully support that. Because he didn't come back in shape. Look, but the thing that everybody misses is he didn't come back in shape.
Right.
He didn't come back in shape. And the fact that he wasn't tan accentuated the fact that he wasn't in shape. Now he just wears a shirt. He wore a shirt for the last 10 years. God. I used to get in arguments with him at TNA because I'm like, going, dude, you look great. Take the shirt off because you look sloppy in the shirt. Here this guy is, he's 50 years old, whatever the hell he was, and looks fabulous, but wanted to wear a shirt because he was self-conscious about the way he looked. I'm like, dude, man, you look great. Everybody's going to forgive you. But they're not when it looks like you're trying to hide it.
Old bodybuilder stuff, huh?
I guess. But, to me, I used to see Sting without his shirt on and go, dude, you look good.
Yeah.
You train hard, you look good, nothing to be embarrassed about, but, they want to hide it. They feel it's not the optimum look. The attempt to hide it and camouflage it to me, it makes it look worse and draws attention to it. And no tan. Yeah, that's bad.
Let's talk about this match with John Cena and Triple H. I mentioned that this is the 50-50 response era for John Cena.
Mhm.
And a lot of the guys are, of course, behind Triple H, but the women and children, well, they're big John Cena fans. And when these guys are exchanging punches, whenever Triple H hits a blow, yay. Whenever John Cena hits a blow, boo. And Meltzer would write, that stuff started in Japan in giant Baba comedy matches, and guys like it because it's an easy Pavlovian reaction. But to me, it takes the edge off the intensity. I guess I never really thought about that, but that makes sense to me. If we're focused on yay and boo, we're not really suspending our disbelief that this is a fight, right?
I mean, not really. It's crowd participation. So, however the crowd is participating, they're involved in the match and they're invested in the match. Thank you. Um, so again, that's up to the performers to gauge that, take that crowd out of that, or bring them into it. Either way, but the fact that they're reacting is great.
They're reacting pretty big here when Cena's going to go to a second pedigree attempt and into the STFU. Yeah, Cena's even hitting pedigrees here, but Triple H makes the ropes. Eventually, Cena's going to power out of the crossface, get Triple H on his shoulders, hits the FU. Triple H is starting to elbow Cena in the head, hits the pedigree. That's the pin. Meltzer would say it was real weird after because Lawler started pushing. Then it looked like Cena had torn his pec. You could tell by how he was saying it that it was a fed backstage line. I guess either they feared he really had, or more likely, they wanted Cena to have an excuse for losing. The next day on TV, it was never even acknowledged. 3 3/4 stars. I know there's the old adage of let's send them home happy. We didn't do that here. I mean, I guess maybe to the live crowd, there was a pro Triple H audience, but he's the heel, by God. Cena's the baby face. How do you decide when's the right time or when's not the right time? Is it all just based on the story, or do
It
you
is
have to
all based
know?
on the story.
Okay.
Yeah, look, it's based on story and where you want to go, and a one night crowd reaction is not going to necessarily change, especially in that moment. If that crowd reaction continues on, maybe you're going to look at it differently. But the fact that the audience was strongly invested in John Cena, loving him or hating him, was clearly evident. He got reactions. They cared about John Cena. And you also have to care about the fact that he was the number one merchandise sales every single night
Right.
by far. Like nobody else is even close to him. So you look at that and you weigh that, and enough of that audience is clearly behind him and supporting him in every way, and they're voting with their dollars by their coming to see him, and they buy his merch and they support and or boo him. Regardless, they care about him and they're invested in him, and that's what's important.
Let's do some questions here and then we'll put a button on this episode.
You're a
Crookshank
bud.
207 says, with the rebranding of ECW not going as well as hoped, what were the thoughts on how to make it the best product you could? I mean, I know you guys had to have 1,000 meetings about this, but when you first are trying this, doesn't seem to be getting any traction the way you may have originally hoped. Is there any crazy idea you remember being considered for the ECW brand, or was it DOA and just going to limp along till the?
I mean, you're asking me, and so I still am of the opinion that if there were that many people that cared about ECW, and yes, people that care are very vocal and very loud, um, then it would have still been in business. There just weren't enough people that cared about that old brand, and you're reviving. Paul Heyman said it himself. You're trying to revive a dead brand, and it's you're trying to resuscitate this dead brand that nobody cared about. I believe, especially in hindsight, that focusing on Raw and SmackDown only, it's like the presidential election. You have two candidates. You you have a choice, versus um, you throw in an independent in the middle of that, it makes everything smaller. So I just don't think that the ECW brand was destined for success.
Deluxe Jam 89 says, with Kofi Kingston's first match on the Raw brand, it was beating Chris Jericho here. Could you see the potential of Kofi, and why do you think it took so long for him to get a shot at the WWE title? Many people wouldn't think of, still got fans, but didn't push it. Not really sure I followed the end of the question there, but Kofi, man, he's been with WWE forever. This was a big opportunity for him here. When did you see the upside in Kofi?
I saw the upside in Kofi the first time that I talked to him in Championship Wrestling from Florida, or Florida's Championship Wrestling, whatever the hell it was. And I talked to him and saw the light in his eye and his love for this business. It was, it was different. You talk to Kofi, whether just you talk to Kofi, you can't help but like him. And then you can't help but feel energized about him. And he is such a positive human being that, yeah, man, I literally saw it the very first time that I met him, and the first time that I got a chance to sit down and talk with him at depth as to why do you want to be in this business? What are you looking for? What's your end game? Where do you want to be? And that he just impressed the hell out of me.
What can you tell us about, when we're taking a look at where CM Punk was on the roster here? I mean, he's Mr. Money in the Bank, or at least flirting with the idea. Um, what was his perception, do you think, backstage at the time?
I think Punk's perception backstage during this time was, look, there was still a lot of skepticism about Punk. He had his detractors and he had his fans. I think that there was also still a lot of confusion as to who exactly CM Punk was. And those, you're in a very stereotypical environment in which you're surrounded by a group that, it's alpha males that like to go out at the end of the night and have a few beers, and by God, this is the way you do it. And somebody come in that's different, man, they're different, so they don't fit in. And Punk was different, but there was something about Punk. There always was something about Punk. And if you got his story and you understood why he's straight edge, you understood why he acted the way he did, why he had the tattoos he had, who he was and how he felt, then you go, okay, I may not get this guy, but I have a much better understanding as to who he is. So I think there was a lot of confusion backstage. And I think that the camps were probably split 50-50.
I bring all this up because the very next day, we're doing a Monday Night Raw from Oklahoma City. And that's where we would see CM Punk get his title shot and win the world title. And it happens the night after Night of the Champions. Is that the result of the way just all the shuffling happened for the draft?
What do you mean?
Well, just thinking, how the Raw champion was Triple H, but he's now on SmackDown. So now we've got to have championship on Raw. CM Punk gets the nod. Is that the thinking?
Freshening it up.
Yeah.
Doing something new. And I think there were a lot of proponents of that and just as many non.
Well, next week, Bruce, we'll be talking about Vengeance 2004.
I have no idea what that is.
We're going back 20 years ago to talk about Chris Benoit defending the world title against Triple H. Edge and Randy Orton are going to square off over the Intercontinental title. Matt Hardy and Kane are in a no DQ match because Lita was pregnant. And yes, this is real. La Resistance are going to defend the tag team titles against Ric Flair and Eugene. That was an actual match that happened on pay-per-view. And we'll talk about it next week here on the program. Get your questions in right now at somethingtowrestle.com. That's your home for all things Bruce Prichard. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell so you'll know the next time we're live. We'd also love to have you follow us on social media You can follow the show at Prichard Show on Twitter and Instagram. It's Something to Wrestle over on Facebook. And if your business targets men that are 25 to 54 years old, well, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us. It's Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies year after year. Why is that? Because it really works. We've got a super targeted audience, so therefore there's very little waste. See how affordable it can be right now at advertisewithbruce.com. Bruce, this was fun, man. We talked about Night of the Champions 2008. It was an interesting time in the company and an interesting time in wrestling. What would you say overall? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle for this paper?
I thought it was a thumbs up.
Yeah.
I thought it was, it was kind of a good time. It was in a transition, and it was a fun time. So it was a rebuilding as well, and a lot of new talent getting opportunities that hadn't before.
Well, you'll have the opportunity to hear all about 20 years ago next week, right here with Bruce Prichard. Hit that subscribe button at somethingtowrestle.com and tell your friends.
Hey, and Conrad, if you get the opportunity to go see Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, go see him, man. I saw him last night in Stanford, the Don't Worry, Be Fluffy tour, and absolutely hilarious, but not just Fluffy, he's awesome, but his band of misfits that travel with him and the comedians that he has appear with him are absolutely phenomenal. It was a fun night. They spent the morning here with us and had breakfast here at the house, and we all hung out and had a good time, but don't sleep on it. And remember, sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. Michael Hayes, Freebird Road. Watch it on YouTube. Get those numbers up, folks.
And find out more when Fluffy is coming to your town by going to fluffyguy.com. That's LUFFY guy.com, fluffyguy.com. And we'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Rock on.
Your house is probably worth more than ever right now. But if you could change one thing about your house, what would it be? Would you put in a new kitchen? Maybe some new hardwood floors? You can do all of that with no money out of pocket at SaveWithConrad.com. Use your equity to make your house worth even more. You might even be able to get a lower payment too. A better house with a lower payment without moving? Sign me up for that. NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.